Ishmael Bia, ABC Antidote. 4 years had passed slowly since the talking of guns ended. The birds had resumed their singing, and was no longer afraid to whisper the passing of time through the breeze that brought day and night. Fode and Abu now lived in the capital city, where they did menial jobs such as carrying heavy loads, selling cigarettes on the street, and anything that was lucrative to pay for their secondary school fees. They ate one meal a day to save money to finish secondary school and start at the university. Sometimes that meal was only a dried loaf of bread that they soaked in water and added sugar to. The day had arrived, their first day of university, and the young men wore their prize blue jackets, well starched khaki pants, shirts, and ties, black shoes polished consistently for 3 years, and briefcases with notebooks, pens, and pencils. When they stepped out of their tin body one bedroom rental, their clothes made them look as though they didn't live in this rundown and poor part of town. Mr. Jabati, their landlord, saw them and said he would increase their rent. They laughed and told him they had saved money for years for this day. On any other day, they would have walked to school, but today they took a taxi up the hill to university campus. Abu and Fode were earlier than any of other students, and they barely spoke to each other as they waited nervously, pacing back and forth from the seats to the door and windows to see if anyone else was coming. At 9 a.m., students began pouring into the classroom, and soon enough, Abu and Fode were surrounded by young men and women eager to learn. Most were naive about the fragility of life and everything around them. The professor walked in the classroom and introduced himself as the all purpose teacher. He said he would be teaching mathematics, English, history, and maybe one more subject until other professors were employed. He carefully set his books down and began the lesson. I thought it would be important for today's class that we talk about education. He looked around the classroom and ran his finger down the names on the sheet of paper he had in his hand. He placed the paper on the desk near his briefcase and raised his head. It will be a way for us to get to know each other. He paused and waited for the air of silence to take hold of the classroom. He asked, "What does education mean to you? What do you think it does for a society, for an individual? What is its purpose?" He smiled to indicate that this would be an interesting discussion. Many of the students who had been in school consistently raised their hands. Their answers and arguments filled the room. It provides us with the knowledge and tools to think and use our minds well. It teaches us how to reason and be civilized. It provides us with careers and changes our perspective. It provides us with knowledge to be leaders of tomorrow. All the students in the classroom had responded except Abu and Fode. The professor noticed and called on them. "Mr. Abu Kamara and Mr. Fode Sese, do you have any opinions, gentlemen?" he asked, eyeing the clothes and applauding them with a nod. It was quiet in the classroom. Fode and Abu looked at each other a bit nervously as they were uncertain whether any answer they gave would be as good as other, seemingly sophisticated students' ones. "It is a right," student interrupted the silence, trying to impress the professor. "It is only a right if we live in a peaceful society." Fode mumbled. "Speak up, Fode, if you want to be heard." The fires were high, their flames licked the dark night and consumed the darkness so that it would brighter for another mile down the potholed road. "Move it, move it. We need all the benches, desks, and anything that can feed this fire." The commander, who called himself Prophet, shouted at the boys who were running from one classroom to another, their guns behind their backs, picking up books, bound papers, and anything that could burn. They made various heaps on other side of the road and lit up the piles that lined from the school compound, which the squad used as an encampment to the river. Commander Prophet always ordered this sort of burning to illuminate the darkness so that the enemy can be seen from far away. He would tell his troops, pointing his long fingers over their heads, by tomorrow they would most likely burn the building before departing. They were in the town of Motenga, where most of the soldier boys had gone to school, the same secondary school they now occupied. As the fires were eating the benches and papers, the soldiers walked up and down the road, tending to them. Fode, a now 16-year-old boy, had bent down to pick up a pile of bound papers that had rolled down a heap of fire. heap of fire. He was about to throw them into the flames when his eyes caught the writing on them. He unrolled the pages and read the essay questions about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. He had taken this test when he was in first year of secondary school. An image of his teacher, Sir Tucker, struck lightning in his head. He had stood in the front of class reciting Roman history to them without a textbook. He had been fascinated and excited by his man who could have been his uncle. He knew so much about places in which he had never set foot. My mind has traveled through the words and books to places where my feet will never touch the earth. Sataka would always tell his students when he saw wonder on their faces. It had made 4 days hard happy to listen to the teacher, but such feelings were now only memories to him, memories that would not easily woken. However, as he looked at the papers, he felt nostalgic for those days as a student. Throw the papers in the fire, soldier. We are not here to read but to fight a war. Commander Prophet interrupted 4 days' thoughts. Yes, sir, he said, and threw the papers into the fire. The commander shook his head and spoke loudly for everyone to hear. You are now receiving another kind of education, which is to stay alive and kill those who want to destroy this country. You cannot do that by reading. You can only do that by listening to me. Understand? Yes, sir. The thin voice of a boy sharply filled the night. Some of you might remember when you were in school and were told that the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, we have guns, so they were not talking about us. Fall back into your places. Yes, sir. The boys ran to their guarding posts. Porter was now consumed with longing for his school days, but he tried hard to ignore any thoughts by starting to smoke marijuana and partake the other drugs that were available in abundance. Night would soon depart the sky, and he hoped that it would take with it the thoughts that had become burdensome to him. It was when the fires were dying, with nothing left to him to give them life, that gunshots erupted. Everyone followed Commander Prophet back to school compound. They gathered near the chapel, which used to be assembly hall. Most of us know the grounds very well, and we attended this school, so deployed to their posts. We must finish the night here. It is our school to let us defend it. Commander Prophet whispered to his band of fighters. The boy knew where to station themselves, so they collected ammunition from the chapel and ran to ready themselves. Ford was stationed with the Koteva, another boy his age who had gone to the school as well. This is the chemistry hall. You remember Fode? Koteva cocked his gun and fumbled in the corner by window to properly position himself. If you want to stay alive, stop thinking about chemistry and get up ready to shoot. Fode settled opposite his former schoolmate. They were quiet for a while. Then the gunmen and boys started coming up the hill, running quietly behind mango and guava trees. Fode and Koteva knew that to reach the school compound, they would have to cross the open spaces with no trees. So the two boys waited to open fire when they happened. The gunmen and boys too seemed to know that they had to cross this open space, so they waited behind the trees. The wind spoke hesitantly as it got heavier, gathering strength to drive the night away to where it was now needed. A rocket propelled grenade and launched at one of the school buildings, and the exchange of gunfire began. Quarterman and didn't allow anyone to pass the opening on their watch. The fighting didn't last long when the attackers retreated. They were followed to the river. None of them were allowed to cross. Only their bodies and blood touched the shores on the other side. That morning, Commander Prophet gave everyone day off to do whatever it was they wanted, as long as it was done on school campus. Most of the boys no longer knew how to be children, so they just sat around idly, playing with their guns, recounting what had happened the previous night. Forde, on the other hand, was not thinking strongly about the school days. He wandered off to visit various classrooms he had set in the lawn. At first, he could not make himself go inside any of the classrooms as he was afraid of remembering what remembering and what that might do to him as a soldier who had to stay alive with no interruption from the memories, especially ones that were good, ones from before the war. But somehow his feet, his tremendous resistance from his mind and heart took him inside one of the now empty halls. Forde looked around and began to hear the echo of chalk squeaking on the blackboard, the teacher's voice pronouncing the word he was writing, and the student following in unison after the teacher. Chlorophyll, they shouted. The teacher moved away from the board so that the pupils would read the rest of what he was writing. It is a green pigment found in most plants. It gives plants their green color and is vital for photosynthesis, which allows plants to obtain energy from light. The pupils read excitedly. thin voices mingling with deeper ones. It seemed so long ago, but Fode hadn't forgotten those words of feeling of sitting in the classroom in his neat and well ironed uniform, the joy on his mother's face as she cupped his cheeks in her hands, right before he went running out to school with his friends. And on his way back from school, he skipped in silent lessons from that day. When he passed adults on the road, they laughed and smiled. His mother waited for him at the entrance of their compound with a cold calabash of water. Fordy sat down against the wall of the classroom and felt tears inside his mind, but they couldn't come out. He no longer knew how to cry. Everything has changed, he thought. Whenever his small boys unit entered any town these days, they brought gunshots and chaos, and people ran away from them. It wasn't as it wasn't as it had been when the sight of him as a schoolboy made people smile and laugh and offer him cucumbers and call him to read their letters from children who lived in the city. People had expectations of remarkable happenings and hope painted on their faces. Now it was only fear and blank faces that Forde saw everywhere. He wasn't sure how long he had been sitting in the empty classroom with his eyes closed and losing awareness of his surroundings. Forde felt someone else next to him. He gently reached for his gun, which leaned on the wall to his right. No need for that, Fode. The voice of Kotiva reached his ears. Fode opened his eyes to see that three fourths of his squad had the eyes glued on his face. Kotiva had a grin on his face, but Honest and Abu seemed perplexed. He let go of his gun and pushed the three faces away from his. Why didn't happen? Kotiva asked what had happened. The boys sat facing each other. You were singing with your eyes closed. Ernest stuttered. Yes, yes, you were. Abu and Kotiva agreed. What did I sing? He asked, his face tightening with fear of what would have happened if he had done such a thing in the presence of Commander Prophet. He hated when the school talked about school. He hated when the boys talked about school or any other time before the war. Some boys had been stabbed to death because, while guarding a post, they had started singing their school song quietly, not knowing that Commander Prophet was standing behind them. Na John Bull you bin day sing. Abu answered that Forte had been singing John Bull and loudly, and they all knew the song, which they had learned in primary school as part of an exercise to remember the alphabet. John Bull, John Bull is my boy, and sent him to school to learn how to spell John Bull. John, John, and Bull, Bull, and that is why they spell John Bull. Ernest sang quickly and quietly before others could place their hands over his mouth. He said he was just explaining to Kotiva how Forde had shouted, but the boy knew he was just singing the song. He just wanted Commander Prophet will kill you for this. Ernest stood and pointed his gun toward the odorless entrance. Only if he finds out. Abu stood up as well as tied his pants. They were too big for him. We will not tell him. None of you will, or I will shoot you myself. Abu, who was older, 17, pointed his fingers at the others. He pulled Kotiva and Fode up and explained to them that many of the other boys had been recited school songs and things they had learned before the war when they closed their eyes to rest. Even for a second, he felt that it was because they were camping in the school grounds. The boys began walking back to chapel to eat their share of whatever little food was available. Do you think this is only happening because we are at the school compound? We have burned down many schools, you know. Kotua whispered to his friends. Do you have another explanation? Abu asked. Maybe it's because we have burned all those books, or maybe because we no longer have room in our brains for bad things, so we are going back to what had been. Kotua said, and none of other boys responded. They had sighted Commander Prophet walking towards them. They saluted him as he walked by. Glaring at their faces, he always reminded the boys that he was Prophet and therefore could see their thoughts. They were afraid of him terribly. Commander Prophet was on his way to his quarters, as he called the house that had belonged to the principal of the school. That night, Koteva, Fode, Abu, and Ernest sat together as though it were only way they could keep the secret and also protect one another. They sat on the steps of chapel, and as the night grew thicker, they heard boys singing various school songs in their sleep. The boys who were sleeping became terrified that they would be complicit to the fact the commander prophet found out. They woke up the boys who sang in their sleep and threatened to kill them. None of the boys knew why a fellow soldier wanted to kill them. They wanted an explanation, and when they were told that each had said in his sleep, they promised not to do it again. It is because we are not fighting as much anymore. Too much time on our hands. One boy said, and fired a couple of rounds into the night and walked away. Each night things got worse as more boys would either say something about remembering their time at the school or recount things in their sleep. Some of the boys talked about chromosomes, some recited the multiplication table, some other spelling contest, and to make things more complicated in the midst of this chaos, they have secretly discussed how to put an end to the madness to make sure what Commander Prophet didn't know what was happening. In order to make up, in order to come up with a solution, they had to talk about what had happened, which was dangerous. The boys felt that Commander Prophet would hear them even if they whispered to one another. Abu decided that they must do something to make sure that the sharp ears of Commander Prophet were filled with something else. While some of the boys discussed a solution, a good number of boys would march and sing the their squad song. We fight for this country, we kill for this country, and we die for this country. We are soldiers in the army for freedom. With the barrel of our guns, we will seek the truth and free this country. The first night the boys tested this method, it worked very well. To the surprise, Commander Prophet and his lieutenants glowed with pride and engaged in firing to celebrate that they thought it was enthusiasm and complete control over the minds of young soldiers. While this was going on, the boys at the main guarding post, which included Kotiva, Forde, Abu, and others, and two others, decided that they would make sure none of the boys slept enough to drink. They would take turns observing to make sure no one sat by himself and therefore was able to sleep. As the boys quickly chatted about Abu realized the solution would not work and that he had just discovered another. He smiled at his friends and said, "This is a solution," pointing at the marching boys. "What do you mean?" Forde asked. "We will just sing this war song to cover whoever is dreaming or singing. This way the ears of Commander Power are always pleased and he cannot hear the school songs." Abu jumped up from the guarding post and started singing and marching toward the gathering. The solution worked every night until the war came to an end a few weeks later. It allowed the young boys to hold on to some of their past, at least in their dreams when it was possible. The professor was now walking toward the back of the classroom where Fode and Abu sat. Education, whether belief or just memory of it, creates anchors that prevent us from losing humanity completely as a society and as individuals. Abu spoke. His deep voice and confidence shocked him and sent blood rushing through his veins, making his hands tremble. The professor stopped and looked around the classroom. "So you are saying that this isn't only right, but that it in fact saves the life source of society and its people." The professor faced Abu directly. Abu looked toward Fode for help. "Education is the most important, powerful medicine that cures violence. It strengthens the mind to resist violence, to transform elements of violence that are fear and loss of self. Of course, one has to have some basic understanding of reality. In general, education can reawaken the mind and spirit after it had been broken." Forde said, looking at the professor. The professor stood in silence for a while and said, "I have taught for many years but never heard such an interesting answer to this question. Are you sure you should be in this class?" The class laughed, some pleasantly, others missing the point. "What gives you such understanding about education?" the professor asked as he walked up to front of the classroom. Fode and Abu weren't expecting such a question, not in the first day of class. They looked away. They both looked away. The student hesitantly entered the classroom and gave Professor a note. He read it and shook his head, dismissing the young man. I must go for an emergency meeting. We will continue this discussions tomorrow. Good day. Professor picked up his belongings and hurried out of the door. The students burst into chatter as they hurried up the various parts of the campus. Abu and Fode remained seated in the classroom. Memories of the past had consumed them.
Article 23 Work and Fair Wages. Nadine Gordimer. Amnesty. When we heard he was released, I ran all over the farm and through the fence to our people on the next farm to tell everybody. I only saw afterward I had torn my dress on the barbed wire and there was a scratch with blood on my shoulder. He went away from this place 9 years ago, signed up to work in town with what they call a construction company, building glass walls up to the sky. For the first 2 years, he came home for the weekend once a month and 2 weeks at Christmas. That was when he asked my father for me, and he began to pay. He and I thought that in 3 years he would have paid enough for us to get married. But then he started wearing that t shirt. He told us he had joined the union. He told us about the strike, how he was one of the men who went to talk to the bosses because some others had been laid off after the strike. He has always been good at talking, even in English. He was the best at the farm school. He used to read the newspapers the Indian wraps soap and sugar in when you buy at the store. There was trouble at the hostel where he had a bed, and riots over paying rent in the townships. And he told me, just me, not the old ones, that wherever people were fighting against the way we are treated, they were doing it for all of us. On the farms as well as the towns, the unions were with them. He was with them, making speeches, marching. The third year, he heard he was in prison instead of getting married. We didn't know where to find him until he went on trial. The case was heard in a town far away. I couldn't go often to the court because by that time I had passed my standard 8 and I was working in the farm school. Also, my parents were short of money. Two of my brothers who had gone away to work in town didn't send home. I suppose they lived with girlfriends and had to buy things. And other brother work here for the boy and the pay is very small. We have 2 goats, a few cows. We are allowed to graze and a patch of land where my mother can grow vegetables. No cash from that. When I saw him in the court, he looked beautiful in a blue suit with a striped shirt and a brown tie. All the accused, his comrades, he said, were well dressed. The union bought the clothes so that the judge and the prosecutor would know. I did. The prosecutor would know they weren't dealing with stupid, yes boss, black men who didn't know their rights. These things and everything else about the court and the trial he explained to me when I was allowed to visit him in jail. Our little girl was born while the trial went on, and when I brought the baby to court the first time to show him, his comrades hugged him and then hugged me across the barrier of the prisoner's dock. And they had clubbed together to give me some money as a present for the baby. He chose the name for her, Inkuloleko. Then the trial was over and he got 6 years. He was sent to the island. We all knew about the island. Our leaders had been there so long, but I have never seen except to color it in blue at school. And I couldn't imagine a piece of earth surrounded by it. I could only think of a cake of dung dropped by the cattle floating in a pool of rainwater they had crossed. The water showing the sky like looking glass, blue. I was ashamed only to think that. Yeah, he had told me how the glass walls showed the pavement trees and the other buildings in the street. and the colors of the cars and the clouds as the crane lifted him on a platform higher and higher through the sky to work at the top of a building. He was allowed one letter a month. It was my letter because his parents didn't know how to write. I used to go to them where they worked on another farm to ask what message they wanted to send. The mother always cried and put her hands on her head and said nothing. And the old man who preached to us in the world every Sunday said, "Tell my son, we are praying. God will make everything all right for him." Once he wrote back, "That's the trouble. Our people on the farms, they are told God will decide what's good for them, so that they won't find the force to do anything to change their lives." After 2 years had passed, we, his parents and I, had saved up enough money to go to Cape Town to visit him. We went by train and slept on the floor at the station and asked the way. Next day to the ferry. People were kind. They knew that if you wanted the ferry, it was because you had somebody of yours on the island. And there it was. There was the sea. It was green and blue, climbing and falling, bursting white all the way to the sky. A terrible wind was slapping it this way and that. It hit the island, but people like us, also waiting for the ferry, pointed where the island must be. Far out in the sea that I never thought I would be, like it really was. There were other boats and ships as big as buildings that go to other places all over the world. But the ferry is only for the island. It doesn't go anywhere else in the world, only to the island. So everybody waiting there was waiting for the island. There could be no mistake, we were not in the right place. We had sweets and cookies, trousers, and a warm coat for him. A woman standing with us said we wouldn't be allowed to give him the clothes, and I wasn't wearing anymore the old beret pulled down over my head that farm girls wear. I had bought relaxer cream from the man who comes round the farms selling things out of a box on his bicycle, and my hair was combed up thick under a flat scarf that didn't cover the gold colored rings in my ears. His mother had a blanket tied round her waist over her dress, a farm woman. But I looked just as good as any of the other girls there. When the ferry was ready to take us, we stood all pressed together and quite like the cattle waiting to let through a gate. One man kept looking round with his chin moving up and down. He was counting. He must have been afraid. There were too many to get on, and he didn't want to be left behind. We all moved up to the policeman in charge, and everyone ahead of us went on to the boat. But when our turn came and he put out his hand for something, I didn't know what. We didn't have a permit. We didn't know that before you come to Cape Town, before you come to the ferry for the island, you have to have a police permit to visit a prisoner on the island. I tried to ask him nicely. The wind blew the voice out of my mind. We were turned away. We saw the ferry rock, bumping the landing where we stood, moving, lifted, and dropped by all that water, getting smaller and smaller, until we didn't know if we were really seeing it or one of the words that looked black, dipping up and down out there. The only good thing was, of the other people took the sweets and cookies for him. He wrote and said he got them. But it wasn't a good letter, of course not. He was cross with me. I should have found out. I should have known about the permit. He was right. I bought the train tickets. I asked where to go for the ferry. I should have known about the permit. I have passed a standard 8. There was an advice office to go to in town. The churches ran it, he wrote. But the farm is so far from town. We on the farms don't know about these things. It was as he said, our ignorance is the way. We are kept down. This ignorance must go. We took the train back and we never went to the island. Never saw him in the 3 more years he was there. Not once. We couldn't find the money for the train. His father died, and I had no help his mother from my pay. For our people, the worry is always the money. I wrote, when will we ever have money? Then he sent such a good letter. That's what I am on the island for. Far away from you. I am here. I'm here so that one day our people will have the things they need: land, food, the end of ignorance. There was something else. I could just read the word power. The prison had blacked out. All his letters were not just for me. The prison officer read them before I could. He was coming home after only 5 years. That's what it seemed to me when I heard the 5 years were suddenly disappeared. Nothing. There was no whole still year to wait. I showed my edit. I showed my our little girl his photo again. That's your daddy. He's coming. You are going to see him. She told the other girls at school. I've got a daddy, just as she showed off about the kid goat she had at home. We wanted him to come at once, and at the same time, we wanted time to prepare. His mother lived with one of his uncles. Now that his father was dead, there was no house of his father for him to take me to as soon as we married. If there had been time, my father would have cut poles. My mother and I would have baked bricks, cut thatch, and built a house for him and me and the child. We were not sure what day he would arrive. We only heard on my radio his name and the names of some others who were released. Then at the Indian store, I noticed the newspaper, The Nation, written by black people, and on the front, a picture of a lot of people dancing and waving. I saw at once it was at that ferry. Some men were being carried on other men's shoulder. I couldn't see which one was him. We were waiting. The ferry had brought him from the island, but we remembered Cape Town is a long way from us. Then he did come on a Saturday. No school, so I was working with my mother, hoeing and weeding round the pumpkins and mealies. My hair, that I meant to keep nice tied in an old duck, a combi came over the veld and his comrades had brought him. I wanted to run away and wash, but he stood there stretching his legs, calling, hey, hey, with his comrades making a noise around him. And my mother started shrieking in the old style, I. And my father was clapping and stamping toward him. He held his arms open to us. This big man in town clothes, polished shoes, and all the time, while he hugged me, I was holding my dirty hands full of mud away from him behind his back. His teeth hit me hard through his lips. He grabbed at my mother and she struggled to hold the child up to him. I thought we would all fall down. Then everyone was quiet. The child behind my mother. He picked her, but she turned her head away to her shoulder. He spoke to her gently, but she wouldn't speak to him. She is nearly 6 years old. I told her not to be a baby. She said, that's not him. The comrades all laughed. We laughed. She ran off and he said, she has to have time to get used to me. He has put on weight. Yes, a lot. You couldn't believe it. He used to be so thin, his feet looked too big for him. I used to feel his bones, but now, that night, when he lay on me, he was so heavy. I didn't remember it was like that. Such a long time. It's strange to get stronger in prison. I thought he wouldn't have enough to eat and would come out weak. Everyone said, look at him. He's a man now. He laughed and banged his fist on his chest. told them how the comrades exercised in their cells. He would run 3 miles a day, stepping up and down on one place on the floor of that small cell where he was kept. After we were together at night, we used to whisper a long time. But now I can feel he's thinking of some things I don't know, and I can't worry him with talk. Also, I don't know what to say. To ask him what it was like 5 years shut away there, or to tell him something about school, or what about the child. What else has happened here? Nothing. Just waiting. Sometimes in the daytime, I do try to tell him what it was like for me here at home. Edit here at home on the farm 5 years. He listens, he's interested, just like he's interested when people from the other farms come to visit and talk to him about little things that happened to them while he was away all that time on the island. He smiles and nods, asks a couple of questions, and then stands up and stretches. I see it's to show them it's enough. His mind is going back to something he was busy with before they came. And we farm people are very slow. We tell things slowly. He used to too. He hasn't signed on for another job, but he can't stay at home with us. We thought after 5 years over there in the middle of that grey and blue sea, so far he would rest with us a little while. The convoy or some cars come to fetch him, and he says, "Don't worry, I don't know what day I will be back." At first, I asked, "What week? Next week?" He tried to explain to me. In the movement, it is not like it was in the union, where you do your work every day and after that you are busy with meetings. In the movement, you never know where you will have to go and what is going to come up next. And the same with money. In the movement, it's not like a job with regular pay. I know that. He doesn't have to tell me. It's like it was going to the island. You do it all for people who suffer because we haven't got money, we haven't got land. Look, he said, speaking to my parents, my home, the home that has been waiting for him with his child. Look at this plate. Look at this place where the white man owns the ground and lets you squat in mud and tin huts. Here only as long as you work for him, Baba and your brother, planting his crops and looking after his cattle. Mama cleaning his house, and you in the school, without even having the chance to train properly as a teacher. The farm owns us, he says. I've been thinking we haven't got a home because there wasn't time to build a house before he came from the island. But we haven't got a home at all. Now I've understood that. I'm not stupid. When the comrades come to this place in the Combe to talk to him, here I don't go away with my mother after we have brought them tea, or if she's made it for the weekend. Beer. They like her beer. They talk about a culture, and there's one of them who makes a point of putting his arm around my mother, calling her the mama of all of them, the mama of Africa. Sometimes they please her very much by telling her how they used to sing on the island and getting her to sing an old song we all know from our grandmothers. Then they join in with their strong voices. My father doesn't like this noise traveling across the world. He's afraid that if the Boer finds out my man is a political from the island and he's holding meetings on the Boer's land, he will tell my father to go and take his family with him. But if my but okay, edit. But my brother says if the Boer says anything, just tell him it's a prayer meeting. Then the singing is over. My mother knows she must go away into the house. I stay and listen. He forgets I'm there when he's talking and arguing about something I can see is important, more important than anything we could ever have to say to each other when we are alone. But now and then, when one of the other comrades is speaking, I see him look at me for a moment. The way I will look him, I see him look at me for a moment, The way I will look up at one of my favorite children in school to encourage the child to understand. The men don't speak to me, and I don't speak. One of the things they talk about is organizing the people on the farms, the workers, like my father and brother, and like his parents used to be. I learned what all these things are: minimum wage, limitation of working hours, the right to strike, annual leave, accident compensation, pensions, sick, and even maternity leave. I am pregnant. At last, I have another child inside me. But that's women's business. When they talk about the big men, the old men, I know who these are. Our leaders are also back from prison. I told him about the child coming. He said, and this one belongs to a new country. He will build the freedom we have fought for. I know he wants to get married, but there's no time for that at prison. There was hardly time for him to make the child. He comes to me just like he comes here to eat a meal or put on clean clothes. Then he picks up the little girl and swings her round and there. It's done. He's getting into the combi. He's already turning to his comrade. That face of his that knows only what's inside his head. Those eyes that move quickly, as if he's chasing something you can't see. The little girl hasn't had time to get used to this man, but I know she will be proud of him one day. How can you tell that to a child, 6 years old? But I tell her about the big men and the old men, our leaders, so she will know that her father was with them on the island. This man is a great man too. On Saturday, no school, and I plant and weed with my mother. She sings, but I don't. I think. On Sundays, there's no work, only prayer meetings out of the farmers' way under the trees, and beer drinks at the mud and tin huts where the farmers allow us to squat on their land. I go off on my own as I used to do when I was a child, making up games and talking to myself where no one would hear me or look for me. I sit on a warm stone in the late afternoon. High up, and the whole valley is a path between the hills, leading away from my feet. It's the Boer's farm, but that's not true. It belongs to nobody. The cattle doesn't know that anyone says he owns it. The sheep, they are grey stones, and then they become a thick grey snake, moving, don't know. Our huts and the old mulberry tree and the little brown mat of earth that my mother dug over yesterday, way down there, and way over there the clump of trees, round the chimneys and the shiny thing that is the TV mast of the farmhouse. They are nothing on the back of this earth. It could twitch them away like a dog does a fly. I'm up in the clouds. The sun behind me is changing the colors of the sky, and the clouds are changing themselves. Slowly, slowly. Some are pink, some are white, swelling like bubbles. Underneath is a bar of grey, not enough to make rain. It gets longer and darker. It grows a thin snout and long body, and then the end of it is a tail. There's a huge grey rat moving across the sky, eating the sky. The child remembered the photo. She said, "That's not him." I'm sitting here, where I came often when he was on the island. I came to get away from the others, to wait by myself. I'm watching the rat. It's losing itself, its shape, eating the sky, and I'm waiting, waiting for him to come back. I'm waiting to come back home. Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and flows downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful thrill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
In the prison of repose in 1966, 1967, and 1968, I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, Casa de Sorte, Dr. Eres, in Rio de Janeiro. Medical diagnosis antisocial, rebellious, incapable of obeying parents. Rather than writing theoretically about the importance of freedom of expression, I would prefer to transcribe here extracts from the diary I kept during my first period of internment. Wednesday, July 28. I was woken up to have my blood pressure taken. Still groggy by sleep, I thought it was a dream, but gradually the reality of the dream began to sink in. It was the end. They told me to get dressed quickly. Outside the house stood a car from the emergency psychiatrist service. I had never imagined how depressing it would be to into such a car. A few neighbors watched from a distance as a thin youth with long hair bowed his head to get into the car. Yes, bowed his head. He was defeated. 9:30. All the necessary bureaucratic documents have been filled out, and here I am again on the ninth floor. How fast things happened. Yesterday I was happily walking with my girlfriend, a little worried but certainly not expecting this. And here I am again. If I'd stayed out all night rather than gone home, I wouldn't have had that scene with my parents. I think of my girlfriend sometimes. I miss her. Everyone is sad. There are no smiles. Every stare into the emptiness, seeking something. My house unencounter with the self. My roommate is obsessed with death. Days when I play the funeral march on guitar. It's good to have my guitar here. It brings a little joy into this atmosphere laden with sadness, the profound sadness of those who aspire to nothing in life and want nothing. The only thing that consoles me is that they still know how to sing. 15. I was walking, 15 o'clock. I was walking to a young man who has been in there for 2 years now. I told him I couldn't bear it and wanted to get out. And he said in all sincerity, "Why? It's great at here. You don't have to worry about anything." I struggled. Deep down, nobody cares about anything anyway. I felt afraid that I might start thinking like him. I now feel real anguish, the anguish of not knowing when I will stop seeing the world through bars. It's indescribable. The anguish of man sentenced to life imprisonment, knowing that one day he'll be given parole. But when will that day come? In a month? 3 years? A year? Never? 17 o'clock. Never? 1920. I can't leave this floor. I can't phone anyone or write letters. A little while ago, I tried in secret to phone my girlfriend. She shouldn't come to the phone. She was having supper. But what if she hadn't been having supper? What would I have said to her? Would I have complained about my lot? Got angry? What would I have said? Who would I have been saying it to? Can I still speak? I'm shocked at how calmly people accept being shut up in here. I'm afraid I might come to accept it too. If every man is an incendiary at 20 and fireman at 40, then I reckon I must be 39 years and 11 months old. I'm on the brink of defeat. I felt this when my mother was there at afternoon. She looks down on me. This is only the first day, and yet I already feel half beaten. but I must not let myself be beaten. Thursday, July 21, 8 o'clock. Yesterday, they gave me a really powerful drug to make me sleep, and I'm only just coming to. During the night, for no apparent reason, my roommate woke me up to ask if I was in favor of masturbation. I said I was and turned around. I really don't understand why he would ask me that. Or perhaps I dreamed, but it was certainly strange. Flavio, my roommate, normally spends long periods in complete silence. When he does speak, he always asks the same question: how are things outside? He still wants to maintain contact with outside world. Poor thing. He's proud of his bohemian lifestyle. But now he's in here and admits that he's ill. I will never do that. I'm fine. 11:30. I've just realized that they have emptied my wallet. I can't buy anything. Rennie, my girlfriend, promised to visit me today. I know it's forbidden, but I need to talk to her. I spoke to her on the phone, but I kept the tone light to disguise my expression. The people here like to show me new things. I'm fond of them really. One guy, Roberto, is always showing me things. A way of calculating someone's age, a voltmeter, etc. Flavio is obsessed with knowing important people. There are endless interesting cases here. One man is always sniffing his food, another doesn't eat anything for fear of getting fat. The third talks only about sex and sexual aberrations. My roommate is lying down and staring into space, looking fed up. They're playing a love song on the radio. I wonder what he's thinking about. Is he desperately searching for himself or is he just drifting aimlessly, lost and defeated? I talked to some of the people, of the other patients. Some have been here for 3 months, others 9, still others have been here for years. I won't be able to bear this. Now, from the 6th hour, here was darkness over all the land onto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Music, the sun beyond the barred windows, dreams, all of this brings with it terrible melancholy. I remember the theatre of Teresopolis, where we put on my play Timeless Youth. It flopped, but it was still a great experience. Those were happy days, when I was free to see the sun come up, go horseback riding, to kiss my girlfriend and smile. Not anymore, not anymore. Sleep, sleep dulls the ability to reason, and I'll end up like everyone else in here. 14:10. I'm waiting for Rennie. My doctor came to my room to bring me an anthology of French poets. It's good, because I'm starting to learn French. He remarked on the fact that I seemed calm, that I appeared to be enjoying myself, and sometimes I do enjoy it here. It's a world apart, where one just eats and sleeps. That's all. But there always comes a moment when I remember the world outside and when I feel like leaving. Not so much. I'm getting used to it. All I need is a typewriter. I know that my girlfriend will come or try to come today. She must be curious to find out what's happening to me. She'll visit another 2 or 3 times and then she'll forget about me. C'est la vie. And I can do nothing about it. I'd like her to come every day to cheer me up as only she can. But that won't happen. I don't even know if they'll let her visit me today. Still, it's a pleasant prospect. The enjoyable suspense of waiting. 14:45. It's quarter to 3 and she hasn't arrived. She won't come now, or perhaps they wouldn't let her in. Friday, July 22, 12 o'clock. I'm beginning to allow sleep to overwhelm me. A heavy, dreamless sleep. Sleep as escape. The sleep that makes me forget that I'm here. 14 o'clock. I've stopped reading The Leopard by Lampedusa. It's one of the most boring books I've ever read. Monotonous, stupid, and pointless. Abandoned it on page 122. It's a shame. I hate leaving anything half finished, but I couldn't understand it. It makes me sleepy, and I must avoid sleep at all costs. 14:45. Conversation with my roommate. I don't want to live here. In Flamingo, in Copacabana, or in any of those places. So where do you want to live, Fabio? In the cemetery. Life has lost all its meaning for me since Carnival 1964. Why? People I loved most in the world didn't want to go with me to the carnival ball at Teatro Municipal. Oh, come on, Fabio. Don't be so silly. There are plenty of other fish in the sea. Pause. Do you still love her? Him. He was a boy. And now he's doing his entrance exam to study medicine. I'm stuck in here waiting for death. Don't talk nonsense, Fabio. He phoned me yesterday. He's a bit effeminate. It would make me so happy if he came to see me. I attempted suicide because of him. I drank ether spray mixed with whiskey on night of the ball. I ended up in the emergency department. Now he's out there and I'm in here, waiting for death. He's a strange guy, Flavio. He seems totally schizoid, but sometimes he talks perfectly normally, like now. I feel sad and powerless. He's mm, he's made several suicide attempts in here. He's often spoken to me about the bohemian life he used to lead, and I've noticed a certain pride in his voice when he did so. I know from my own experience that all bohemians feel proud of being bohemian. Flavio is crying. 15 o'clock. The patients here can sometimes be very funny. ABO, for example, who's 56, told me yesterday that the Bolshevik revolution was financed by the Americans. And there's a young man, the only other patient who's about the same age as I am, who makes everybody laugh. I can't write anymore. Flavio is crying. Saturday, July 23, 10 o'clock. Last night I managed to phone Rennie, who told me that she was still my girlfriend and still loved me very much. That made me so happy. I probably said a lot of silly things. I'm a sentimental fool. But I stopped talking. The telephonist butted in and I couldn't say anything else. Rennie's coming here on Monday. I hope I don't I hope I don't spend all the time complaining. It's awful. I feel inferior. Sunday, July 24. It's Sunday morning. I'm listening to the radio and I'm filled with a terrible sense of solitude, which is slowly killing me. It's Sunday morning, a sad, dull Sunday. I'm here behind bars, not talking to anyone, immersed in my solitude. I like that phrase, immersed in my solitude. It's Sunday morning. No one is singing. The radio is playing a sad song about love and weeping. A day with few prospects. Rennie's far away. My friends are far away, probably sleeping off a night of partying and fun. I'm all alone here. The radio is playing on old fashioned waltz. I think about my father. I feel sorry for him. It must be sad for someone to have a son like me. On this Sunday morning, I feel my love for Winnie die a little. I'm sure her love for me must be dying too. My hands are empty. I have nothing to offer, nothing to give. I feel powerless and defenseless, like a swallow without wings. I feel bad, wicked, alone, alone in the world. Everything here is at once monotonous and unpredictable. I cling fearfully to my photos of Rennie and my cigarettes. They are the only things that can distract me a little. Monday, July 25. I long for you, and the nearer the time gets to our visit, the more I long to see. On Saturday, on the phone, you said that you were still my girlfriend. I'm very glad to have a girlfriend. It makes me feel less alone in here. The world seems nicer place, even when behind bars, and it will be even nicer when you arrive. And so, this morning, I open myself entirely to you, my love, and give you my heart. Feel a bit sad because you're far away and can't be with me all the time. But I'm a man now, and I have to survive this ordeal alone. Sunday, July 31. 13 o'clock. At this hour, on this day, in this hospital, I have just received the news that in my poetry competition run by newspaper Diario di Noticias, I came 9th out of 2,500 entries in the general category and second in my honorable mention category. My poem will probably appear in the anthology they are going to publish. I'm happy. I wish I were outside telling people, talking to everyone. I'm very, very happy. Here, behind the bars, I wonder if Tata still remembers me, her first boyfriend. I don't know if she's grown a lot, if she's thin or fat, if she's intellectual or a member of our society. She might have been crippled or lost her mother. She might have moved into a mansion. I haven't seen her for 8 years, but I'd like to be with her today. I haven't heard from her once since then. The other day I phoned and asked if she used to go out with a guy called Coelho. She said yes and hung up. Saturday, August 6th. Now that Dr. Benjamin has threatened me with insulin and electroconvulsive therapy, now that I have been accused of being a drug addict and that I feel like a cornered animal, utterly defenseless, I want so much to talk to you. If this were the moment when my personality was about to be completely transformed, it if in a few moments' time the systematic destruction of my being was about to begin, I would want you by my side, Dwayne. We talk about the most ordinary things in the world. You'd leave smiling, hoping to see me again in a few days' time. You would know nothing, and I would pretend that everything was fine. As we stood at the door to the left, you'd see my eyes fill with foolish tears, and I'd say it was because our conversation had been so boring it made me yawn. And downstairs, you'd look up and see my hand through the bars waving goodbye. Then I'd come up to my room and cry my heart out, thinking about what was and what should have been and what can never be. Then the doctor would come in with the black bag, electric shock, and enter me and fill my whole body. Sunday, August 7th. Conversation with Dr. Benjamin. You have no self respect. After first admission, I thought you'd never be back, that you'd do all you could to be to become independent. But no, here you are again. What did you achieve in that time? Nothing. What did you get from that trip to Terrasopolis? What did you get out of it? What are you incapable of achieving anything on your own? Why are you incapable of achieving anything on your own? No one can achieve anything on his own. Maybe tell me, what did you gain by going to Terrasopolis? Experience. This thought will spend the rest of his life experimenting. Doctor, anything that is done with love is worthwhile. That's my philosophy. If we love what we do, that's enough to justify our actions. If I went and fetched four schizophrenics from the fourth floor, and I mean real schizoids, even they would come up with a better argument than that. What did I say wrong? What did you say wrong? You spend your whole time creating an image of yourself, a false image, not even noticing that you are failing to make the most of what's inside you. You're nothing. I know. Anything I say is pure self defense. In my own eyes, I'm worthless. Then do something, but you can't. Perfectly happy with the way things are. You've got so used to the situation. Look, if things go like this, I'm going to forget my responsibilities as a doctor and call in a medical team to give you electroconvulsive therapy, insulin, glucose, anything to make you forget and make you more biddable. But I'm going to give you a bit more time. Come on, be a man. Pull yourself together. Sunday, August 14th, Father's Day. Good morning, Dad. Today is your day. For many years, this was the day you'd wake up with a smile on your face. And still smiling, except the present I brought to you, your home. And still smiling, kiss me on the forehead and bless me. Good morning, Dad. Today is your day. And I can neither give you anything nor say anything, because your embittered heart is now deaf to words. You're not the same man. Your heart is old. Your ears are stuffed with despair. Your heart aches, but you still know how to cry. And I think you're crying. The timid tears of a strict, despotic father. You're weeping for me because I'm here behind bars. You're weeping because today is Father's Day and I'm far away. Filling your heart with bitterness and sadness. Good morning, Dad. Your beautiful sun is coming up. Today is a day of celebration and joy for many, but you are sad, and I know that I am your sadness. And I somehow and somehow I become a heavy cross for you to carry on your back, lacerating your skin, wounding your heart. And this very moment, my sister will be coming into your room with lovely present wrapped in a crepe paper and will smile so as not to make her sad too. But inside, your heart is crying. And I can say nothing except dark words of revolt. And I can do nothing but increase your suffering. And I can give you nothing but tears and regret that you brought me into the world. Perhaps if I didn't exist, you'd be happy now. Perhaps you'd have the happiness of a man who only ever wanted one thing, a quiet life. And for now, on Father's Day, you receive the reward of your struggle in form of kisses, trinkets bought with the small monthly allowance that has remained untouched for weeks in a drawer, so that it could be transformed into a present, which, however small, assumes vast proportions in the heart of every father. Today is Father's Day, but my dad had me admitted to hospital for the insane. I'm too far away to embrace you. I'm far from the family, far from everything, and I know that when you see other fathers surrounded by their children, showering them with affection, you'll feel a pang in a poor, embittered heart. But I'm in here and haven't seen the sun for many days now. If I could give you something, it would be the darkness of someone who no longer aspires to anything or yearns for anything in the life. That's why I do nothing. That's why I can't even say good morning, dear father. May you be happy. You were a man, and one night you engendered me. My mother gave birth to me in great pain. But now give you a little of the treasure. But now I can give you a little of the treasure placed in my heart by your hard-working hands. I can't even say that. I have to stay very still so as not to make you even sadder. So that you don't know that I'm suffering and I'm unhappy in here, in the midst of quietness, normally only to be found in heaven. If, of course, heaven exists. It must be sad to have a son like me, Dad. Good morning, Dad. My hands are empty, and I give you this rising sun, red and omnipotent, to help you feel less sad and more content, thinking that you are right and I'm happy. Tuesday, August 23. It's dawn, the eve of my birthday. I'd like to write a message full of optimism and understanding in this notebook. That's why I tore out the previous pages so devoid of compassion and so sad. It's hard, especially for someone of my temperament, to withstand 33 days without going out into the courtyard and seeing the sun. It's really hard, believe me. But deep down, I know I'm not the most unfortunate of men. I have youth flowing in my veins, and I can start all over again thousands of times. It's the eve of my birthday. With those lines written at dawn, I would like to regain a little confidence. Look, Paulo, you can always do your university entrance exam next year. You still got many years ahead of you. Make the most of these days to think a little and to write a lot. Rosetta, your typewriter, your loyal companion at arms, is with you, ready to serve you whenever you wish. Do you remember what Salinger wrote? Store away your experiences. Perhaps later they'll be useful to someone else, just as experiences of those who came before you were useful to you. Think about that. Don't think of yourself as being alone. After all, to begin with, your friends were a great support. Being forgotten is a law of life. You probably forget about one of your friends if they left. Don't be angry with your friends because of that. They did what they could. They lost heart as you would in their place. Thursday, September 1. I've been here since July. Now I'm becoming more and more afraid. I'm to blame for everything. Yesterday, for example, I was the only one to agree to have an injection to help me sleep. And I was the only one to obey the nurse and lie down. The others, meanwhile, continued kicking up a ruckus. One of the nuns who helped out here took a dislike to my girlfriend, and so she's not allowed to visit me anymore. They found out I was going to sell my shirt to the other patients and they wouldn't tell me. I lost an opportunity to earn some money. But I managed to persuade my friends to bring me a gun, a Beretta. If I need, I'll use it. Then dropping for a haircut. Right, my hair's all gone. Now I'm left with baby face, feeling vulnerable and mad as hell. Now I feel like I fear I might feel the desire to stay here. I don't want to leave me now. I don't want to leave now. I'm finished. I hadn't cut my hair since February until people in this hospital gave me an option. Cut your hair or stay here for good. I prefer to cut my hair, but then came the feeling that I destroyed the last thing remaining to me. The speech was going to be kind of manifesto of rebellion, but now I've lost all will. I am well and truly screwed. I'm finished. I won't rebel again. I'm almost resigned. Here ends me, with no messages to send, nothing, no desire to win, a desire that had its guts ripped out by human hatred. It was good to feel this total defeat. Now let's start all over again. In 1998, I published my book, Veronica Decides to Die, based on my experiences in the psychiatric hospital. Up until then, even though I was well known as a writer, no one knew about this period of my life. Senator Eduardo, Eduardo Suplicy reads out passages from the book in the Congress and finally managed to get approval for a new law on arbitrary hospitalization, a law that had been hanging around in Brazilian Congress for 10 years. Nowadays, Brazil has one of the most modern and most democratic systems in this respect. Translated from Portuguese by Margaret Jule Costa.
Poem about my rights by June Jordan. Even tonight, and I need to take a walk and clear my head. About this poem, about why I can't go out without changing my clothes, my shoes, my body posture, my gender identity, my age, my status as a woman, alone in the evening, alone on the streets, alone not being the point being that I can't do what I want to do with my own body because I am the wrong sex, the wrong age, the wrong skin. And suppose it was not here in the city, but down on the beach or far into the woods. And I wanted to go there by myself, thinking about God, or thinking about children, or thinking about the world. All of it, disclosed by the stars and the silence. I could not go, and I could not think, and I could not stay there alone. As I need to be alone because I can't do what I want to do with my own body. And who in the hell sets things up like this? And in France, they say, if the guy penetrates but does not ejaculate, then he did not rape me. And if after stabbing him, if after screams, if after bagging the bastard, and if even after smashing a hammer to his head, if even after that, if he and his buddies fuck me after that, then I consented and there was no rape because finally, you understand, finally they fucked me over because I was wrong. I was wrong again to be me, being me where I was. Wrong to be who I am, which is exactly like South Africa penetrating into Namibia, penetrating into Angola. And does that mean, how do you know if Pretoria ejaculates? What will the evidence look like? The proof of the monster jackboot ejaculation on black land. And if after Namibia, and if after Angola, and even after Zimbabwe, and if after all of my kinsmen and women resist even to self immolation of the villages, and if after that we lose nevertheless, what will the big boys say? Will they claim my consent? Do you follow me? We are the wrong people of the wrong skin on the wrong continent. And what in the hell is everybody being reasonable about? And according to the Times, this week, back in 1966, the CIA decided that they had this problem. and the problem was a man named Nakrumah. So they killed him, and before that it was Petrus Lumumba, and before that it was my father on the campus of my Ivy League school, and my father afraid to walk into the cafeteria because he said he was wrong he was wrong, the wrong age, the wrong skin, the wrong gender identity, and he was paying my tuition. And before that, it was my father saying I was wrong, saying that I should have been a boy because he wanted one, a boy, and that I should have been lighter skinned and that I should have had straighter hair, and that I should not be a boy crazy, but instead I should be one, a boy. And before that, it was my mother pleading plastic surgery for my nose and braces for my teeth, and telling me to let the books loose to let them lose another. Words. I'm very familiar with the problems of the CIA and the problems of South Africa and the problems of Exxon Corporation and the problems of white America in general and the problems of the teachers and the preachers and the FBI and the social workers. And my particular mom and dad, I'm very familiar with the problems because the problems turn out to be me. I am the history of rape. I am the history of the rejection of who I am. I am the history of the terrorized incarceration of myself. I am the history of battery assault and limitless armies against whatever I want to do with my mind and my body and my soul. And whether it's about walking out at night, or whether it's about the love that I feel, or whether it's about the sanctity of my vagina, or the sanctity of my national boundaries, or the sanctity of my leaders, or the sanctity of each and every desire, that I know from my personal and idiosyncratic and indisputably single and singular heart, I have been raped. Because I have been the wrong sex, the wrong age, the wrong skin, the wrong nose, the wrong hair, the wrong need, the wrong dream, the wrong geographic, the wrong sartorial. I have been the meaning of rape. I have been the problem everyone seeks to eliminate by forced penetration with or without the evidence of slime. And but let this be unmistakable, this poem is not consent. I do not consent to my mother, to my father, to the teachers, to the FBI, to South Africa, to Bedford Stuyvesant, to Park Avenue, to American Airlines, to the Harden, on the corners, to the sneaky creeps in cars. I'm not wrong. Wrong is not my name. My name is my own, my own, my own. And I can't tell you who the hell sets thing up like this, but I can tell you that from now on, my resistance, my simple and daily and nightly self determination may very well cost you your life.